Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sarah Fletcher, Vice President and Chief Learning Officer for PAEA. I hope that you all are doing well today, and I really appreciate you joining us for this webinar on award-winning conference proposals. We hope that you will find it very helpful and useful as you prepare for the forum. This afternoon, Sarah Michelle, Vice President of Professional Connect Cities and our partner over 5 years at Velvet Chainsaw, will be leading the webinar. And so I'm going to turn things over to her to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, everybody. I want to get you really familiar with the chat box. If you look on the far right in your little window there, you should be able to click on where it says chat. And if you click on the arrow pointing down, it's going to open up a box. And you can see that I said, welcome everybody in there. Could you please jump in that box and make sure you're hitting all entire audience for your, I think that's the auto setting anyways. But tell us where you are in your chat box. I want to know, where you're calling from. What program are you calling from? What city? Are you freezing like everybody else is? I'm in Colorado and it's going to be a high of 25 degrees today with snow coming. But if you could jump in and tell us where you are right now in the chat box, because we are going to be having you use this chat box for questions that pop up, because your lines are muted and we know you're going to have a lot of questions. So I just want you to get familiar with that. And again, just click on the chat box. And I hope, wondering if some of you guys are going into questions. Oh, you are, it looks like. Okay, are you guys seeing that? I think, Sarah, it looks like maybe that people are going into the questions as opposed to the chat. I see somebody from Florence, South Carolina. The chat box, is that not being seen by everybody? Well, I will, okay, so it sounds like people are not seeing the chat box. Thank you. Shani, for clarifying that. So go into the question box then, I guess, and you can put your questions in there and tell us where you are calling from and where you're at. And we will be monitoring the question box now. I'm sorry you guys aren't seeing the chat box, but we know where you are, so we'll go there. And please let us know as questions pop up for you. So thank you, first of all, for being with us today, for taking the time, and for your interest in contributing a proposal, really adding to the value of Forum in 2019. I mean, we know that the educational content and the content that we design for Forum 2019 is one of the most valuable aspects of attending, of being there. And so your interest in really contributing to that value proposition is greatly appreciated. And we really appreciate you being here today, or if you're listening to this recording, to learn more about how, first of all, you can submit a great winning session proposal that gets selected, but more importantly, how you can really deliver a great experience for your colleagues in Washington, D.C. this year. So social sharing is welcome. That's my Twitter handle. If you want to share something out with your community, by all means, do that. This is a safe space to ponder, disagree, or question. So put those questions into the question box. And again, we've got several staff members from PAEA monitoring that. And if I don't catch the question, I will ask them periodically to check in and let me know what we're missing. So one of the big filters that I've been working with the PAEA team to really be using as a filter as we look at session proposals coming in and we develop the content. And this is a great quote from Seth Godin. If you don't know Seth Godin, oh my gosh, Google that man, follow him. He's a brilliant thinker and kind of just a phenomenal strategist. And one of the things he says is determining content value. People will pay for content if it's so unique that they can't get it anywhere else, so fast they benefit from getting it before anyone else, or so related to their community that paying for it brings them closer to other people. And so when you think about the content that we gather and we put on the program and we select for Forum, should kind of hit these buttons. Is it unique? Is it relevant and fresh and new that they're going to get it at first at Forum? Maybe it's, fast. We're trend setting. We're looking towards the future, and it's so related to the community of PA educators that by being there in DC together to hear this content, it brings us closer together as a community. So I just wanted you to see that filter as you think about your proposal. Another thing I want to share with you is something that Jay Cross, who is a wonderful educator, talks about the 3 levels of adult learners and their educational needs and wants. And one of the things that we want you to be thinking about is really submitting your proposal for the mature or experienced educator. We know that we have early educators that are going to come to Forum, and that's what the pre-conference is really designed for. Those workshops that we do before the Forum starts is really geared towards getting the new emerging educator, the early educator, kind of up on those skills. And when we actually start Forum, we really want to be hitting to that mature or experienced educator, because the early educator or emerging educator loves to be challenged. And I promise you, I've never, in the thousands of evaluations I've read, I have never, ever read the education was over my head. What I read constantly is the education was too basic. So really be looking for your description and the way you design your session. If it's for a mature and experience, you're going to want to be doing, collaborating, giving feedback, modeling, reflecting, making sure you're doing conversing and connecting, letting people discover and even potentially coach each other. And those kinds of ideas I wanted you to be thinking about, so that we're designing for that experienced or mature educator, so that the level of education, again, is so high and so first and so unique, like we just saw with Seth Godin, that people are going to register and absolutely not miss your session. So one of the first things you want to do with a great session proposal is start with a killer session title, because first impressions matter. I mean, think about your behavior when you scan maybe you're scanning for the first time the session offerings on a website, or if you get on site with the program or on the mobile app. We all do this. We scan, and the first thing we do is we read the session title. And the session title has to be catchy. It has to provoke some kind of like eyebrows raised, like what? I want to know more about this, to get someone to kind of read the description. If the title doesn't catch you, and it's the same thing with book titles, people just keep walking past the book, or they don't touch the book. So I can't express to you enough how important that title is. So to give you a couple of ideas to think about with this is what the American writers and artists call the 4 U's approach to writing great titles. And the first one is, it has to be useful to the reader. So as a PA educator, when I look at your title, what would get me to want to read more is the title, first of all, useful to me? Is it relevant? The second one is it urgent? Does it provide me with a sense of urgency that, oh my gosh, if I cannot miss this session, there's just an immediate urgency feel that I have in reading this, that it forces me to at least read the description or look at your learning outcomes because you've caught my interest and there's some urgency there. Is it unique? Does it convey the idea that the main benefit of this session is somehow unique? Remember what Seth Godin says: if people will pay for content, if it's so unique that they really need to be there in order to get this information. So how can you convey the idea that the main benefit of this session is somehow unique? And then finally, the last U is, does all the above, the first 3 U's above, can you do this in a very ultra specific way with your title? So showing in that it's useful, that it's urgent, and that it's unique in a very ultra specific way that is so relevant and so immediate to a PA educator that they can't walk away from that session. And by the way, your peers are the reviewers that are reviewing your session submission. And if you can hit these 4 U's for them, they almost have to really continue reading your proposal with a very high level of interest because you're hitting these main points for them that they must continue to read on, because you've literally grabbed them at that first look at your title. So for example, here's an example of what I would call the very top one is a boring title, the state of PA education. Okay, does not, maybe you could say that's useful, but it certainly doesn't create a sense of urgency for me. It's not very unique, and it's not super ultra specific. But the other title that I wrote was what you need to know about the macro trends impacting PA education. You know, what you need to know, ultra specific. You're speaking to me about the macro trends impacting PA education, would be as just a way, using those 4 U's to really create more of an urgency with that title that I would want to read more. You got to think of your title as, you know, does it get me to want to open the cover and then at least look at the table of contents to decide if I want to read that book? It's the same way with the session proposal. So one of the great tools that we use at Velvet Chainsaw and a lot of writers use is this website right here. So grab this website. We will also, I don't know, maybe Justine or somebody, if you guys could grab that title, that link, and put it into the question bar, that'll be easy for people to grab that link and just go right on the site. But this is from the American Marketing Institute, and this is a great analyzer. It's a free service. You just literally drop your title into their analyzer and you hit go, and it will analyze your title and tell you if there's going to be an emotional connection by the reader, if there's, you know, if you have enough words in there to kind of solicit an emotional response. And then it will give you suggestions as to how you might want to improve that title to get more of an emotional connection. So we use this analyzer all the time when we're coming up with titles for our blog posts and for articles that we write. It's a wonderful, wonderful free tool to do that. So I encourage you to take advantage of the American Marketing Institute's headline analyzer. So session description. So now you've written the title. You've got a great killer title. Now, how do you get people to actually read this description and then want to learn even more about the session, or at least have already a very favorable view of it? So besides the killer first sentence, the killer first sentence is really critical, because again, people are, you know, in our case with PAEA, I mean, there might be something like 600, 500 submissions coming in, and you know, people are naturally, if you've got the title and you've got a killer first sentence, the chances of them continuing to read with great interest is very, very high. Because it's just like everybody. If you've got, you know, 50 submissions you're reviewing, and we're all volunteers or we're all busy, the chances of them continuing to read your submission, if you can have a killer title and a killer first sentence, is much, much, much higher than if you don't. So really making that killer first sentence strong, figuring out the focus for what's in it for them. You know, the focus is not on you. It focuses on them, not you. So really getting into the shoes of the PA educator that's reviewing your proposal. You know, what's in it for them? What about the session is so relevant and so unique that it's focused on them. It's all about them. And they can literally see, oh my gosh, you know, I would love to be in the session, or I really personally need this session. I like to say the third point is, what's the benefit of the benefit? So like that first killer sentence might be the benefit statement about your session, about why you'd want to be, you know, why this would be so important to a PA educator. But then what's the benefit of the benefit? So what, by going to the session, by getting this benefit, what could possibly happen? So learning how to write, learning how to develop a great, you know, residency program. The benefit of that might be that so you can continue to recruit very top tier candidates for your PA program, because you have this great clinical sites or this great residency program. So that's the benefit of the benefit example. You want to make a promise in your description. You know, what are you promising to deliver when somebody comes to the session? What do you almost kind of like money back guarantee is going to happen that they're going to experience and learn, or the information that's going to be shared? You make a promise in that statement. You also want to make sure in your description that you're solving a problem or a challenge that you know that they have. So, think of your session very specifically around the solution that you solve. What is the problem or challenge facing PA educators that your session is tackling? And be very clear in your description how you plan to present solutions, opportunities for discussion to really wrestle with this challenge so that people come out of your session with a new way of looking at this challenge, some new perspective, a new attitude, a new behavior change, a new skill. Really getting problem centric with your description. Because remember, people are not content centric, they're problem centric. Think about the way you look to solve problems on Google or with Siri or Alexa. You ask a question. You're very specific around, this is the problem I'm trying to solve here. What solutions do you have for me? That's how you really need to be tackling your description. And then always make it relevant. Relevancy is king. Context is king, not content. How is this relevant to a PA educator? Why is this so important and so necessary right now? Remember that, going back to so unique, so fast. And then by being in the session, it's going to connect people not only as a community, as an education community, but make us smarter and better at PA education. So then the next thing we're going to really ask you to tackle is learning objectives. And learning objectives, we're going to ask you to write, I believe it's 3, 2 are for sure, but I believe it's 3 we're asking for, where we want you to tell us, what is the outcome? What's the almost the guarantee you're telling us that by participating in your session, the learner is going to walk out with these 3 measurably observable results. So you really want to be thinking to yourself, what do you want your participants to remember about your session? That's a great way to start thinking about your objective. What 3 outcomes will they walk out knowing? And again, what's observable, what's measurable? That you could actually say, yeah, that happened. People came out with 7 tips. People had a chance to discuss with their peers ways to improve their clinical site rotations or something. And so it's measurable and observable is what you really want to be doing with those. And I'd like to think that your learning objectives are really kind of your contract as the speaker. It's your contract with the audience. You're basically saying to your colleagues, I promise you as a speaker, by the end of my session, you can hold me accountable to these 3 objectives that I'm designing this 60, 90, whatever long your session is, to deliver on. And that's your kind of contract that you're making with your audience. And so this is a great example of a learning outcome. Or learning objective. Identify 7 ways to improve the implementation of interdisciplinary education to advance your residency program. So when you look back at what I just talked about, you could interview a candidate coming out of your session and they should be able to say, yeah, we talked about 7 ways to do that. We experienced it, we discussed it. I have notes, I have this handout, we talked about ways to improve this. And the benefit is if I can do this, I'm going to advance our residency program at our school. And that's a win-win-win for everybody. So that's an example of a good outcome. So you want also to make sure that you're focusing on the outcomes of the session and that it facilitates the learning that's going to happen. And most importantly, that your objective is focusing on the attitude, behavior, or skill change that you plan to impact with your session. Because that's where transformational learning happens, is when we can affect attitude, behavior, or skill change. So also, what is actively done by the participant, right? So you want to use action verbs. You always want to be looking at your first word, and that in those, one of your learning outcomes should be an action verb. What is the participant going to be actively doing, identifying, sharing, discussing, discovering. Those are great words. Go look up, get online and Google, great action verbs and go from that list. But that's how you want to start your sentence. And again, a great learning outcome really holds the speaker and the participant accountable. And by the way, it holds the participant accountable to what we said was, what we agreed was going to happen in this session. And it really, to me, it really is a contract that you're making with each other about how this session was designed and for what learning was going to occur. So the next thing we're going to ask you to do in the call for proposal that you're going to go on and do starting next week is, what will the participants be doing in your session? We want to know the plan for how you will engage them. How do you plan to engage them? One of the things we're really striking for at Forum and what we really know resonates, and you guys are educators, so you understand this, it's happening in your classrooms, is we know how the brain works now. We know evidence-based education. We know that telling doesn't equal learning. Talking head in the front of the room doesn't translate into learning. And we want to model being a learning organization. And so we know that we want our participants, in order for the learning to stick, that we know our participants, our attendees need to engage with the content. And we also know that people come to Forum for networking. It is the #1 reason why on our evaluations, when we ask, why did you come to Forum? What gets you coming back? It's about the chance to connect with my peers. So we want to make sure, since the education is the cornerstone, the concurrent sessions are the cornerstone of what happens at Forum, we want to make sure that we're delivering on that networking value and we're providing that opportunity for peers to learn from peers. So we're really going to be pushing you this year to tell us how you plan on doing that. And if your session proposal says they're going to be listening to me for an hour, is probably not going to get you a high rating. We're really going to be looking for evidence on how you plan to engage them. So with that, I will say this before I turn it over to Sarah. I will tell you that we do plan to do another webinar that I'll be doing specifically on how do we actually giving you tools for how to engage them. We're also going to record a short video that you'll have a video to go to. We're going to curate some great content that we're going to put on our speaker resource page that's going to have all kinds of, I have a 8-page handout that's got like, here's a technique you can use, here's how you set it up, here's how you do it, here's how you debrief it. So look for that coming soon on the speaker resource page, plus the video, plus we're going to do the webinar. So we know we're asking you to do this, but we also plan to come alongside you and support you in doing this. And we really hope that you see this as a member benefit, because we believe some of these techniques you're going to use, you're going to be able to actually use in the classroom with your students in your program. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sarah. Or Sarah, is it going to be you, I think, talking about the new changes as well on the submission proposal? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much, Sarah. I think that was very helpful, and I hope people on the call found that information helpful as well, and we'll get some great submissions. Just quickly, so some of the changes you can look for, we will be using a brand new system this year that I think you all will find very intuitive and user-friendly. We've also added an additional focus area. So last year we labeled these tracks, and this year they're areas of focus. We've added health system science, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, really the kind of third pillar of medical education, clinical science, basic science, and now health system science, everything like population health, quality and safety measures, team-based care, health disparities. So that'll just look for that description as well. And then you can see the other sessions, areas of focus listed here on the screen: competency-based education, integration of technology into the learning experience, teaching the 21st century learner, transforming the student experience, driving innovations in clinical education, organizational success, inclusive excellence, and then what I just mentioned, health system science, in case anybody doesn't have their screen in front of them. So with that, you can go to the next slide. Our call for proposals will begin next Monday, February the 4th. It will open then, and it will close on March the 4th. I think somebody's going to advance the slides here. Okay.
Sorry, that was me.
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. So again, just to recap, yes, Monday, February the 4th, next week, they'll open, and then Monday, March 4th, a month later, it'll close at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. As Sarah already mentioned, so I won't be redundant, we will have several resources available to help you all should you have questions or things that you want to know more about the submission process. And then we will send those notifications out in May to the people who've been accepted, as well as anybody who isn't accepted, but I'm sure that will not happen to anybody on the call. And along with that, just to know, I want to reiterate what Sarah said in terms of it is peer reviewed. Each proposal has 4 blinded peer reviews, and then our Education Programming Steering Committee, which is a group, again, of PA faculty volunteers, helps to make final selections based on several criteria and the scores that are submitted. So just a little bit more there on the process. And I think that's pretty much everything at this point for as far as I'm concerned. I think we're ready for questions at this point.
Yeah. So I guess go ahead and post your questions in the question box. I'm having a hard time seeing them, guys. So if Sonia or Sarah, if you guys can see them, if you want to, I do see a couple people were saying, hey, it's nice weather in North Carolina. That's nice. I'm glad you're warm there. But does anybody have a question specifically about the process or some of the changes? Throw them in the question box. Are you guys seeing any?
And Sarah, so this is Sarah Fletcher. I don't see any, but Justine, maybe you are.
I'm not seeing any questions aside from the weather updates.
Okay. Well, certainly, if you have questions, you know how to reach the PA team. I'm also going to put my email up there. There's my email address. And I'm certainly, if you have a question about your session proposal, and if you want me to actually give you my 2 cents, if you want to actually, don't actually write me and say, please write my proposal. I had someone do that recently. But if you want to shoot your killer title and your description over to me before you submit it online, I'd be happy to do that. That's my email. But if you have questions about the process or about the tracks or any of the formats that we're doing this year, please reach out to Sonia or Sarah or any of the great folks over at PAEA, and they will be happy to help you. And I think we're right on the half hour. So, oh, here's a question. I see something just popped up. Okay, April's asking, I have a question. Bear with me while I type it out. Okay. You guys seeing that? It's really small. I can't see it very well, but Sarah, can you see what's coming from April? Or
no,
Sonia?
I do not.
Sonia or Justine, can you guys see it?
I see it. I think she's still typing the actual question.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll hang out for you, April, to answer your question. Oh, here we go. All right. Oh, gosh, it's so small. I can barely see this. Can somebody read it? Who can see it better? Justine or Tom?
Yeah, I can read it.
Go ahead.
The question says, you mentioned tailoring proposals for experienced or mature faculty. I've met a lot of faculty at conferences that could benefit from topics that even experienced faculty struggle with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're just leveraging my point that I made in that the higher the content and the more that everybody has to wrestle with it. I like to think of the speaker as a sense maker, because here's the reality. The speaker is no longer the smartest person in the room, right? I mean, we all have information we're living in an information digital age where we have a question, we ask Siri, Alexa, we ask Google, we get the answer instantly. There's not going to be hardly anything that we're going to be sharing at Forum that people haven't already been researching, looking at, talking about, reading about. And so the more we think about coming to Forum as a place for people to wrestle with the content, and the more we challenge them really wrestle with it. And if people come out scratching their heads and going, oh my God, that really stretched my brain, that maybe thinks in a totally different way, we will have done our job. And you're right. There's all kinds of topics that no matter how experienced you are should make you go, wow, I don't have the answers for that. And the more we get people talking to each other and saying, gosh, do you have the answer for that? I'm a new educator, and an experienced educator says, well, here's how we're doing it at our school. And that sharing begins to happen. Everybody kind of wins from that. So yeah, we want the content to be high level. We want to stretch people. We want people to wrestle with the content. We want sometimes sessions to not have all the answers, but to have people walk out going, how do I keep this conversation going? And the more we bring people together as a tribe like that and supporting one another and challenging one another, the more valuable being at Forum becomes. And it becomes this place you can't miss this, because the content and the continuing conversations are so valuable that there's a fear of missing out if you're not there. Does that help, April? Were you making a different point?
There is a follow-up question to that, Sarah. It says, would feedback be provided if topics seem to be less tailored to experienced faculty?
Sarah, do you want to take that? I'm not sure, or Sonia, I'm not sure how we're going to be doing feedback.
So what we plan to do is share the comments, the feedback that's given to us from the different reviewers. Sometimes we have to kind of just collate that a little bit, depending upon but we try to share almost verbatim the raw comments that people give. So look for that to come with letters of if there are people that are rejected. And truthfully, at some point, because I've been a part of this process now for the past 2 years, sometimes we have a lot of proposals that are almost identical. And so our education program and steering committee has done a good job to reach out in those cases to folks and just say, maybe both of you scored really high. Maybe you want to think about merging together to do the presentation because they were so similar. So just, yeah, I would say, though, we do try to give feedback based on what we receive from the reviewers.
Yeah. And I think the follow-up to that might the person asking that question. So if I think they might be asking if the proposal was strong, but it seemed the content was more basic, would there be an opportunity to go back to that person and say, can you raise the level of this? And I think it might depend, right? It's going to depend.
I would say it depends.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, the Education Programming Steering Committee volunteers do a great job of, if they see something that they think has potential, but there may be some, like you said, Sarah, something that could strengthen it. And again, a lot more factors go into this. For example, just kind of the complete overview of all submissions and the content we're hoping to deliver. But it definitely depends. But there have been times where they definitely have gone back to people and said, could you give us more? Could you drill down a little bit more? Is there something they could do? So, yeah, I think it's kind of circumstances that, based on the need and things like that.
Yep. Great. Any other questions? Oh, thanks, April. I see that one. Great. Well, if there are no other questions, then we will let you guys go. And again, we be looking for that, the CFP to open a week from today. The site will be open, and jump on it soon. My advice to you is don't wait till the last minute. Put a date in your calendar to really get on it earlier and not wait till the last minute. And because I don't want you to be one of those people that had all these great intentions and then the time ran out, because it will not be open forever. We're definitely tightening the time period, and we're trying to curate and get the program together sooner than we did last year. So help us with that. We're excited for you to submit. We want to support you. We want you to be successful. That's why we're doing this. That's why you're going to see a lot more support coming around you this year. And we know how important this adds to the value proposition. So thanks everybody for being on the call. Have a great rest of your week. Stay warm.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.